Hey everyone, welcome back. Welcome back. We are back with our Astro Self Care Sunday. And if you are new here, my name is Kenya. Thanks for tuning in. This is where we come every Sunday, or where I come every Sunday, to give you just a little bit more information about astrology, taking the woo out of it, demystifying it, so that you can use it for your personal self care, for transformation, for development, for growth, and for expansion. So, what we're doing for these next several weeks is we're going to go through each zodiac sign, and I am going to give you 5 points related to each sign. Okay. So, one of the first things I'm going to do is just give you kind of all the, every sign has a lot of different concepts to them. Okay. And it'll make more sense when I go through that. And so it's really important that I talk about that so that you have some context of the energy, the element, the modality. It's a little technical, but really important ultimately when I start explaining things. Okay. So we'll go through that. We'll also talk about the high frequency of that sign, the high frequency of its energy, how you can use the favorable, I guess, traits, and then the low frequency. And that's sometimes kind of the stereotypes when people have kind of these negative stereotypes sometimes about signs or a certain sign. A lot of time that's when the sign is showing up in its lower octave or lower frequency. So we'll say what each sign has it too. Each planet has it. Everything in astrology has a yin and a yang. So we'll go through that. And then we'll also talk about what else did we say that I have it? I have it all jotted down. Let me not act like I don't. Oh, yeah. And then, of course, we got to talk about the actual self care, right? So I'm going to give you actual self care things you can do using that energy, particularly if the sign we're talking about is your sun sign, your moon sign, or your rising, which I'm going to describe in just a moment. And then after that, we'll always end with kind of a question of the day, a question, a common question that I get, or a question that you may have. So this is where please put your questions in the comments, whether the question be about anything that I'm saying about Aries, which is the sign we're going to talk about today, or about anything else related to astrology. I'll go through those comments. I'll be keeping them, I'll go through the comments, take note of the questions, I'll keep them. And each week I'll pull a question for us to explore. Okay, so I do have a question of the day. So you want to watch all the way through so you can hear what the question is of today and get some answers. So we are going to spend time talking about Aries today. Now, before we get into it, I do want to say this because this is really important so that you have context. Those of you who are just curious about astrology really don't know very much, don't know all the signs, maybe kind of know your sign, but not all the details. You will hear me say your sun sign. So the sun sign is the sign that most of us mainstream commercial, when we say, what's your sign? That's really the sign relegated to the sun. Just saying what position the sun was in, what zodiac sign the sun was in at the time you were born. Okay. So that's a sun sign. Then you have your moon sign. And back to the sun sign. The sun sign really represents your overall kind of personality. It's what the soul really came here to overall shine and be about. So if you think about what the sun energetically is like, what do we see when we see the sun? We see light, we see radiance, we feel heat. A lot of times there's a certain brightness. So it's the same idea. It's an energy. Your sun sign is how you shine. It is the part of your persona, the part of your personality that you show up and radiate most with. Okay. The next really kind of top energy is moon sign. And so the moon is related to the mother. It's also related to our physical bodies and our emotionals and our emotions and our emotional needs. Okay. So this is what makes the moon sign. And a lot of time, because we are navigating our emotions and our body every day, it's a day-to-day thing we have to do. A lot of times people may experience us, or we may feel real connected to more of our moon sign energy. Okay. Then you have the rising. And the rising is kind of technical to describe astrologically, scientifically, but just understand this. Your rising sign is basically what is your motivation, your drive, kind of what your soul came here to project to others. It's an energy that's projected out that a lot of people experience, even if you don't always see it in yourself. It's an energy that is driving you in a lot of ways, okay? And that a lot of times people that you project and other people may experience and see you as, okay? So it's another important energy. So your sun, moon, and rising. So those, you also have a Saturn sign, you got a Mars, you got a Mercury. We're going to get into that much later, but I wanted to say those three because if you go decide to look at your birth chart and you want to see, oh, what's my sun, what's my moon, what's my rising, and today we're going to talk about Aries. So if Aries is in your top three, so you hear me say top three, or you hear astrologers say top three, if Aries is in your top three, then everything I say is probably pretty present somewhere in your life. Okay. So if you have an Aries sun, if your birthday is between the end of March and the late April, which I'll give exact dates in a moment, that's Aries. Okay. If you go to a birth chart, and there's many ways to get a birth chart. I'm going to talk about that a little later. If you want right now to be able to see your birth chart, you do need to know your birth location, birth time, obviously your birth date and year. A lot of people don't know their birth time. If you don't know your birth time, you should still be able to find your sun and your moon. You just wouldn't be able to find the rising. If you know, oh, it was early morning, I say use sunrise. You can even go and look what time the sun rose on the date of your birthday. If you're like, it was the evening, then I say, go and look, 6 p.m. But that's not exact. So I always tell people, if you really want to know your rising, you really want to know the time you were born. Okay. All right. So let's get into Aries. So if you are an Aries sun, or Aries is your moon, or Aries is your rising, let's get into it. Okay. So some top aspects and characteristics and things you really want to know about Aries. Okay. So one, the date typically, because Aries kicks off spring. Okay. It kicks off the spring solstice. Is it spring solstice? Spring equinox, whatever it is. It kicks off spring. Okay. And so because it kicks off spring, the date is typically around March 20, March 21. Okay. So depending on what year you were born, you may actually be a Pisces, but typically March 20th through April 19th. Okay, is considered Aries. It starts spring. The symbol that you'll see for Aries is the ram. Aries is a fire sign. This is very important. Think about what fire does, right? Fire is not this subtle thing, right? Fire is fire, it ignites, it's active. So that's very representative of Aries energy. Okay. The modality is that it's a cardinal sign. So you're going to hear me say modalities. At one point, we'll go more in detail of exactly what that means. But basically, Aries is the first sign. It initiates the spring. It's a cardinal sign. Cardinal means initiates activity. Okay. It's ruled by the planet of Mars, and it rules the first house, which I'm not going to get really in detail. It's opposite of Libra. That gets really technical. But I do want to just really hit more than anything that it is a fire sign and it is a cardinal um, modality. Okay. And the reason why I really want to hit those two is because when you at least know the element and at least its modality, it can tell you a lot about the sign instead of you trying to memorize every sign, everything, because that can get confusing. So, some take homes about Aries energy. Um, I personally don't have Aries in my top three, but Aries is a pretty big part of my chart because I have a placement that's pretty significant with it. Okay. So it's not where it sits in my charts, a significant place. I have Chiron. Those of you who are a little bit more advanced, we'll talk about Chiron later, but that's a generational asteroid. But Aries is that energy that when it's in its really high frequency, it is the I am. It represents our initiative. it represents our independence and our assertion and our empowerment. Okay. Again, it being ruled by Mars, Mars is the planet of power. So you see how this all kind of connects? You see how it all connects, right? So in its high frequency, Aries is about let's get it started. Let's do something different. Let's be passionate about it. It's a very passionate energy. And it's a very active energy. Okay. Because fire is active, right? Fire spreads, it's hot, it's flame. And so Aries is, again, I mentioned this. If you go back to last week's video, to the first video, the welcome intro, I talk about how we all have every sign in us, right? And so we all have Aries somewhere in our lives. All right. And Aries is that first house. So that first house is the I am, I exert myself. And so in its what's beautiful about us all having our Aries, we all have that fire in us. Now, depending on where it sits in your birth chart, what house it sits, it's gonna show up more in that part of your life. So I'll use myself as an example. Aries for me is in my 10th house, which is the part of life that talks about rules, career, and the public. Surprise, surprise. Here I am. Here's my new job here. Here's my new career over here. Here's my new page. Here's my new profile. Aries all day. Okay. I'm very activated in that, right? And it's interesting because I have Chiron there. So there was a time where I wasn't in the public. There was a lot of fear around that, a lot of doubt around my ability to do that, not a lot of confidence around that. So kind of getting the woundedness of the high frequency stuff. So that kind of gives you an example of how Aries can show up, right? Now, a lower frequency of Aries, meaning when we are not nurturing, when we are not doing the self care, when we are not being in alignment with the knowing that we feel inside, then that's when a sign's energy will show up in what I call low frequency. Okay. You're going to hear me say that a lot. Lower octave, you may hear. That's usually the stereotypical negative things that you'll hear about a sign. So, Aries, the thing is this, if it's not being nurtured, because it has this vitality and it wants to exert self, it can get very irritable when it doesn't. When it's not nurturing and it's not able to really activate its energy, it's very irritable, frustrated, even quick to anger. And if you are never really nurturing the Aries energy, then you can be always in that lower frequency. If you are not taking care of yourself, if you are not in alignment with the truth and with the things that you really desire, especially for Aries, because like I said, Aries is the initiator. It's very passionate. It wants to be active. And when there's some kind of barrier or some kind of doubt or something that is causing a level of disempowerment, it will come off as irritability, anger, frustration. And so it's super, super important for where Aries sits in us to nurture it. So for me, for career, when I wasn't doing what I knew, whether that be with music, with arts, with teaching, with doing even this, it's just like this stagnant in me. And for me, it's an irritability and a frustration. I'm not so quick to anger, but an irritability and frustration. And like this stagnant, just, ugh. And it's not to say that everybody doesn't feel like that to a certain degree, but some people with career, it's like, well, I see the bigger picture. I know that I want to get the paycheck. So that's definitely not me. So I have to really make sure that I'm really nurturing my career in a way and I'm really allowing myself to get comfortable with the uncomfortable so that I'm activated. Okay. All right, so now let's talk about some self-care, some things that you can do. So those of you who have, particularly those of you who have your Aries, your Aries sign, that's your sun sign, or it's your moon, or it's your rising, okay? And for all of us, finding where is Aries in your chart, because that part of life needs to be nurtured a certain way. But definitely, if it's your sun sign or your moon sign or your rising, I want you to consider the following things to do for self care. Okay. So remember, we're talking about an energy that's very active, right? It's an energy that naturally likes to initiate. So our self care should nurture those things in both activated ways and also ways to nurture and comfort those energies. So, a big thing for Aries energy, when I meet an Aries, they want to be active. So, exercise and physical activity, movement, very, very, very important for Aries energy to feel alive. And mindful movement, not just I'm just scattered all over the place, because that's one of the things Aries energy has to be careful of. In order for, because it's the great initiator, it doesn't, it's sometimes that the initiative of that flame will flicker out. Okay. And so, in order for it to make sense, I think, having consistent exercise, consistent physical activity, and consistent mindful movements important. So, outdoor adventures is another really thing, because, again, let's just think about activation. Creative expression is very important, goal setting. Because the goal setting and achievement and planning, it lets you kind of see, particularly with goal setting, because goal setting suggests I've got to activate something to make it happen. Okay. The other thing, though, because Aries can be, I got to here, I'm over here, and it can get in that energy. It's very important, in order to keep it settled and to keep it more grounded, to do things like mindfulness. Be very mindful, mindfulness and meditation, self discovery and journaling and learning, so that that fire doesn't get up here to the point where it now becomes more agitation, to give it just a little bit more of a, so that it can calm, rest and rejuvenation. Along with that whole act, if you're going to be really in your Aries energy, that very active state, then health, diet, nutrition, all of that. Social connection is another really big part of self care for Aries. The Aries needs to be going and doing and experiencing things, so that it can feel passionate, so it can express itself, so it can discover itself. So, those are all forms of self care. Self care doesn't always have to just mean going to the spa. For Aries, it's actually about activity. That's what's going to keep the Aries feeling balanced. Okay. And so, when you hear me talk about self care, a lot of the times I'm talking about what is the energy that's going to fit with how you are wired. And this is why we can't just say, oh, everybody just go. And if you go to the spa and relax, you're going to be fine. Well, for Aries, that might be okay when I'm really in my heightened, but at times I need to be active. I need to be working out. I need to be physical. I need to go for a run. That's a very self care activity for Aries energy, because of the activation of it all. Okay. So, I'm trying to keep these videos to just around 20 minutes, and we're hitting that time. But if you can remember again, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. I had mentioned this before. It's the very first. It is the I am. That's kind of the phrase. Again, it's symbolized by the ram. It starts spring, so it's the dates of like March 20th around to April 19th around. The element, which is super important, is fire. Okay. And just understand, we have four fire signs. So we have Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. Am I saying this right? Four or three? No, it's three. So it's Aries, Leo. Why do I feel like it's something? Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. Okay. And then, yeah, because there's four elements. I was about to say, ain't that a fourth one? No. So Aries, Leo, Sagittarius are our fire signs. Our water signs are Scorpio, Cancer, Pisces. Our air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And our earth signs are Capricorn, Virgo, and Capricorn, Virgo, and Taurus. Brain fog. I'm so focused on Aries. I'm like, what are the other things? But it's important to remember those elements, because that will give you um, a nice clue to remember kind of what the signs are. I know that's how I use it. It's like, oh, yeah, that's a fire sign. So that means it's going to be activated. It's going to be energized. You think it's an initiator because it's a cardinal sign. But more than anything, if you have Aries in your top three, to really nurture the Aries spirit is to nurture that activation in you, so you feel a sense of power. When you're not, there's going to be a feeling of agitation and a feeling of disempowerment. Okay. All right. So let's go for our question of the day, so that I said I would do that. each day. So the question of the day is, what is a natal chart and how do I get one? So a natal chart is synonymous with the word birth chart. Okay, so you'll hear me say I do birth chart readings. Same thing if I said I do natal chart readings. And what that is basically what position were all the planets, asteroids, everything in the very second and moment you were born. And so the birth chart just gives us an idea. It almost just looks like a key or a map of the placement of all the planets. And so and that doesn't change. It never changes. So while the planets are moving along, the moon is moving every day, Mercury, all that's moving, we have kind of a daily chart. The chart shifts because the planets shift, right? But you were born that one moment, right? So that doesn't change. Your birth chart becomes it's super, super, super powerful because it literally is saying your wiring for your entire journey here on earth as a soul. So what I do when I'm doing birth chart guidance readings, and I call it guidance readings for what I do, because I don't just read and tell you what the planets are and what they mean in your chart. I actually spend the first half hour of an hour session just asking questions. I use it more of a coaching time. If you remember, again, my background is in counseling. I have my master's in counseling and I'm a certified holistic coach. So I like to use the first half just to ask you some questions. So, one, that you can better hear your own story, reflect on some things about your own life. And then I show you everything you say, I can show it in the chart. Okay. And so the second half, I show it in your birth chart. Everything you say, the questions are in a way so that I can show you what it is, and then I can give you a little bit more insight and perspectives on kind of the high frequency and the low frequency of certain aspects of your chart to just pay attention to, and how you may want to look at your career path or look at your personal path to some personal goals or purpose. And so the way that you get your birth charts are free. You can go online. There's a variety. Honestly, you can put in Google birth chart calculator, and for free, places will allow you. A lot of times they want your email just so that they can collect email addresses. But yeah, as long as you have your time of birth, date of birth, location of birth, you put it in one of the calculators in the sites and it will show you. Now, it will look very confusing. And you will, if you are not familiar with astrology or you haven't really gotten into looking at birth charts, you're going to be like, what? That's another reason why I implore you, if you want to really dig into this, to work with an astrologer or someone like myself so that we can help you interpret it better, because it can be such a lovely guide for you. So that is what a natal chart is, and that's how you get one. So if you have a question on anything that I have said today, or if you simply have a new question that just got spurred in your mind, please put it in the comments so that I can pick it out and then we can include it in our next week's thing, which next week we're going to go over Taurus. And so if you are a Taurus, baby, if Taurus is in your sun sign, or if Taurus is your moon, or Taurus is your rising, you want to join us, because again, we'll talk more about that high frequency and the lower frequency, and we'll talk more about what self-care things you can do. Okay. If you want more details, visit findingyourvoiceafter40.com. That's how you can do a free discovery call with me and we can chat more, or you can get a whole birth chart reading. If you go to findingyourvoiceafter40.com/services, you'll see that. So yeah. And for the fall season, I'm doing some discounts. So email me also at info@findingyourvoiceafter40.com. So I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited to do this. And next week we'll be back. We'll be talking about Taurus. And like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, so that you can just, again, see how easy that was. There was no woo in that. No woo. And I promise you, if you go and you talk to someone who has Aries in those top three, there is an activator in them. They are active. They are initiators. They initiate many things. A lot of times, and very talented within the things that they do. It's funny. I have a lot of musicians I work with who are Aries, just because, again, they want to create. They want to initiate and create their expression. So I love Aries energy. All right. That's it. You guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And again, make sure that you like and subscribe so we can keep in touch and you can keep watching the videos. All right. Take care.